Welcome to Torchbearers by College Esports News. My name is Kenneth Christina, and on this show, we talk with those carrying the flame of college esports at programs across the continent to learn from their expertise in a particular segment of our vast ecosystem. Across North America, some of the most storied programs in collegiate esports are beginning to close their doors, most often due to a general lack of funding from the university. Despite these programs getting cut, the flame of college esports is bound to live on, often in the hands of the student leaders next in line to pick up the torch. Enter Jack Perrick, current student club president of SLU Esports. Since it's been about a year and a half since the program at St. Louis University dissolved, I caught up with Jack to talk about what life has been like going back to a fully independent student organization. We talk about everything that goes into an unexpected transition such as this one, and how the program has stabilized in the time since. Insights on what life has been like post-varsity can be a reminder of how best we can structure our programs to ensure that our students always have a central beacon of light guiding them and bringing them together. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Jack. Well, Jack, thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, nice to meet you, Kenneth.
Good to meet you as well. To start off, I like to ask the question of all of our guests, what is top of your mind? First thing that you have to worry about that's esports related in your role.
Ooh. I think the thing that we focus on the most at SLU is trying to get our teams together, trying to get our teams playing in their tournaments. We have a lot of games, so I'd have to look, but we've got like 2 Valorant teams, we got like 2 Marvel Rivals teams, a League team, all over the place. So that's kind of my primary role, is wrangling them, getting them into their tournaments, and getting those tournaments streamed as much as we can. I'd say that's kind of our big thing. Also trying to have like social events and whatnot here and there for I call it Gen Pop, the general populace and people who are not maybe a member of the club but want to get involved with esports and kind of feel it out. There's also that aspect of it.
So we're recording this on a Thursday. What's tomorrow? Is there a match that you've got to wrangle about tomorrow on Friday?
I don't actually think so. I know. So
Okay.
the main team that's been playing so far is our Mega Strikers team. They've already had a couple rounds, and we've been working on.
Woohoo! Go Mega Strikers!
Yep, getting those streamed. I think Valorant and League won't start for a little longer because the fall CVAL and the fall CLOL tournaments aren't for a bit
Right.
longer. But those are usually our big. Obviously, in the past, the big CLOL was our big pull. So
Yeah. Good deal. All right. Next question I want to ask, just to get a little bit of background and context on yourself. What's your story? How did you get into video games in the first place in general? And then how did you get into esports and the competitive side?
okay, so we're going all the way back. I
All
like
the
it.
way back.
Ooh. So I wonder what was the first video game I ever played? Probably Angry Birds. And I think it was in the waiting room of a doctor's office on my mom's friend's iPhone 4, because my mom for the longest time was like, strictly, we are not going to get any phones, we're not going to get any, tablets, we're not going to get any of that, until I was like maybe, I don't know, 7 years old or so. So she didn't even have a cell phone until I was like maybe 9. And so we were sitting in the doctor's office with one of her friends, because we'd been at the park, and I think her kid, like, I don't know, hit his head or something. And then so her mom's friend gave me the phone and was like, here, try this. So I started playing Angry Birds. I think that's the origin probably of it all. A couple months after that, I managed to convince her to get me an iPod Touch. I want to say 4th generation. Going way back.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then I played all kinds of stuff, Flappy Bird, all that good stuff. And then at some point I got into the 5v5 competitive shebang of Overwatch, League, Valorant. Probably Actually, before that was my Minecraft phase. So
Oh, everyone had that, of course.
exactly, the Bed Wars, the Sky Wars.
All right.
That was like my middle school years. So I did that for like 2 or 3 years, and then eventually I ended up on League. League was really my big game for, yeah. Roll
Yeah.
your eyes. About
Oh,
five
yeah.
years, I want to say. I'm sort of starting to taper off now into like Valorant and even like Osu now. I'm on the leaning towards more casual. I'm getting too old for all that sweaty
Yeah.
competitive grind. It's too much, but yeah, I played just I have to have at least 5,000 hours in League over 5 years. And I peaked like Diamond 2, and I did play it at SLU. So that SLU would come in probably three. I think I started League in 2019, so I would have been playing for 3 years ish when I finally came to SLU,
Yeah.
and I wanted to join the League team because I wanted to, get the experience of playing competitive, like competitive, not just ranked. Like tournament style stuff, esports style thing. So I did. I joined the team my freshman year. I think we had 3 teams at the time, and I was put on the B team. I eventually made my way up to the A team, and then by second semester, I actually became the captain of the league teams. So I was managing them while also playing on them. Freshman year, the abundance of time that I had back then. So
Yeah. No kidding.
then after I think eBoard applications came out sometime in the spring of my freshman year, so this would be 2023 spring. So I applied to be a production manager. So I kind of helped out with the SLU Esports Twitch and the SLU Esports social medias. I made a couple graphics and Photoshop and whatnot. Um, and then at the end of my sophomore year, so spring 2024, the former president, I think you guys might know, Tavin, he
Yep.
approached me and he's
I
like,
know Tavin pretty well.
"Yep, we think you might be the best candidate for the next president." So I gladly accepted for my junior year, and now coming into my senior year, I am still the president. And yeah, like I said, in terms of games, I'd say majority is like Steam games or Osu kind of thing now. Like
Sure.
just chilling
Okay.
out whenever I
Yeah.
have the time. So
No, I get that completely. My current addiction, I suppose, when I get the chance to play, is No Man's Sky. I got
it's a
back
good
into
one.
that. So nothing to do with anything competitively minded whatsoever.
Right.
I think many of us can relate to that, to say the least. But first thing, obviously, as you know, right, we're here to talk about what happened. Elephant in the room, right?
Hmm.
But I'm curious to hear from your perspective because I think you are very uniquely situated, especially as someone who was tapped as future president while all of that was transpiring. So walk me through when you heard the news that the SLU program was shutting down. How did you hear that news and how was it delivered? And then what was your reaction?
Yeah. So I think that would have been. I think. Ooh, I can't remember if it was in July. It was somewhere in the range of July to September of. Yeah, it would be last year. So when I was transitioning into being president, like you said. Um, And I think I heard about it when Chu, our former director, Nick, he just like dropped a message in our e-board chat and he was like, "Yo, program is cut. Um, I'm losing my job. Varsity is going away." And we all just like, our entire e-board chat is like, "What? You said, huh? What are you talking about, bro?" And he's
That
like,
sounds like Nick too.
yeah, yeah. So he was like, "Yep. I mean, just they just came out of nowhere. They emailed me yesterday, and they're like, 'Yep, this program is cut. You guys are done,' et cetera, et cetera." So it was definitely very shocking, and of course, like brand new president, I was like, "Okay, well, what do we do now?" Because um, varsity, I think, was one of our big draws. Was like even for I've noticed with the league teams. When I was a freshman and when I was a sophomore, when we still had the varsity team, there would be like 15 to 20 people that wanted to play on the league teams each year. Um, and then this past spring, we only had 4. So the numbers have definitely dropped off. And I think even for me, part of the appeal of joining the casual, well, not casual, but like the lower level league teams, not the varsity team, was the dream of being able to be on the varsity team one day. Like, getting good
Yeah.
enough and climbing the ranks or whatever. Um, and so I think it's kind of lost that pull. And so that was like the first thing for me was like, okay, well, we've lost our main leadership guy in Nick, and we've lost like our big attraction, which was varsity, especially after they had just won C-Law in the spring,
Yeah.
or I think it was in June, maybe. Um, so I don't know. It was really wild, but we kind of just had no choice but to keep going. So we made plans. At the time, we were having a monthly Smash tournament on one of the restaurants on campus, and that was like we were still drawing in a good amount of people for that, and that was like a good way of fundraising. That has also since dissolved because Nick was like kind of the main draw for that as well, because he's really big in the Smash scene, and he was
Right.
kind of behind that monthly tournament, or weekly. Sorry, it was weekly at the time. Um, so yeah, some things like that have definitely kind of fallen apart, but I would also say that we have started to build up things in other ways. I know that we're working right now behind the scenes on a partnership with, I think, two or three other clubs um, to do a Halloween event um, sometime in the coming weeks. And that's something we've started to emphasize is collaboration with other organizations. We actually added an e-board spot for outreach coordinator and have been working towards kind of integrating ourselves more on campus, in particular, because I think esports kind of has its own like niche, but we kind of want to level ourselves out and get involved with some of those other clubs. So a little bit of a
Yeah.
tangent there, but yeah, the
No.
news itself was, I don't know. It was just a big mess. It was like
Yeah.
for a month or two there, we were all like, "Are we gonna lose the lab? Like the computer lab that we have in the student center with the 12 PCs?" We were worried like they're gonna come for the lab. Like they're not gonna let us have that room. Um, Later on, we talked with the owner. I don't owner of the building, whatever, the manager of the building at SLU, and he was like, "Yeah, no, you guys are gonna keep it. I want to help you guys." Because like he almost felt bad for us because we had lost,
Yeah.
our big draw, our director, our funding, all that.
Right.
And so he was like, I'm gonna buy you controllers and new consoles and whatever, using some of the BSC funding, which is that building.
Yeah.
Um, so that all kind of worked itself out, but it was definitely
Yeah.
a bit of a panic there for a while.
I can imagine. You kind of slightly touched on it, but before this happened, what was the relationship between the club and the program? Obviously, as you mentioned, right, like people would come into the club with the hope of eventually making it onto the varsity roster. You mentioned that there was obviously a collaboration between at least you all and Nick to run your Smash Brothers tournaments, right? Which might
Hmm.
be something that he was doing more on the side rather than it being part of his day job. But what was the relationship with the program like? How integrated were the two of you, and where were the lines drawn?
So I would say actually towards the end, that was something that we were trying to work on was getting the varsity guys more integrated with the club because it was. I mean, it wasn't like forcefully separated, but a lot of the varsity guys were like remote students online. Um, and so there would only be like two or three of them on campus. And I know even like specifically speaking in terms of the league teams, we would try to get like coaching from the varsity players or like play games with the varsity players or whatever from time to time. But I think that was almost the limit of the interaction between the varsity players and the club itself. They were mostly kind of isolated from us. Chu was super involved with us, though. He, especially again towards the end, he was almost like a spare e-board member. He was always trying to like give us advice, and like he actually was our faculty advisor. So, um, you know, he was giving us his wisdom and whatnot because obviously he founded the club in whatever it was 2018 2020 I can't remember, and then eventually built the varsity program from that. um, and another unfortunate thing is I think there were plans to build out the varsity program to include things like Valorant, and I think like that really could have taken off because obviously, like I said, the draw of the varsity program for the league, for league in particular, was really good. So I really was gunning that we would get like Valorant, for example, and then we'd have like 25 guys wanting to play Valorant, um, all with the hopes of improving and getting on the varsity team, getting scholarships and whatnot. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, it never came. It vanished
Yeah.
into nothingness.
Well, that
But
was the
yeah,
thing too. Was at that time Valorant was the thing, right?
right.
So, with everyone coming right out of the pandemic, everyone's getting back into colleges. Then you start meeting people, and you're like, "Oh, you play Valorant too? Cool, right?"
Hmm.
And so, yeah, that would have been a great opportunity. Was it only league then that was varsity title? Okay, so
Yeah,
it was
so
just the league team.
yeah, it was just the league team. I think at, I'm not sure exactly because I wasn't at SLU during it, but I think there were either plans or there were other varsity like teams or varsity programs. Um, I just don't. I think because the varsity players at the end they had full scholarships. Like to
Yeah.
my knowledge, they each got a full scholarship, and I think there were smaller scholarships for like other game. Like I think he was trying to have like varsity smash in some capacity or something like that. But yeah, what in my time it was only league. I
Okay.
just only picked up some other stuff from old
Sure.
chats and
Right.
scrolling on my off time. So
Yeah.
yeah,
As you do as a club president, right? You want to know what
dig in
happened
the
previous to
files.
you.
Yep.
Exactly. Um, so next question, what were the changes that you had to make as a club in terms of your structure to accommodate for the fact that now that varsity program had dissipated? Obviously, you mentioned now you're adding an outreach person that will directly collaborate with other clubs. What other kinds of changes have you made or thought about making in that time?
Yeah. So I'd say most primarily is the e-board kind of got some touch ups. We have two event coordinators now, and they kind of each specialize in their own thing, kind of. So I'm gonna name drop Patrick. He loves Osu, and so he's been putting together like we've had a couple Osu local tournaments that we've been like streaming and having on weekends, like every couple months or so. And then our other event coordinator, Christy, is kind of like just our general, um, like collaboration events and whatnot, the general event planning. Um, like I said earlier, obviously the outreach coordinator is a really big one, particularly because I think Chu had a lot of good connections and a lot of good outreach because he had been here for a while and he went to SLU and then he had been working with all these people, and so we kind of lost that and wanted to fill that gap. So yeah, we opened outreach coordinator. The production manager kind of got split into social media and just streaming because we're trying to stream every tournament match. So we actually have two production managers right now because Jimmy is our main one, but he's studying abroad in Korea right now. Um, so we brought on another one. Um, and then yeah, the social media manager is kind of separate from that, and they kind of deal with the Instagram and the Twitter and whatnot. Um, so that's most of it in terms of e-board structure. I think it definitely needed some touching up because that cohesion that Chu gave us um, was something a gap that we needed to fill for sure. I think in terms of the club in general, we have since I don't know if it was my sophomore year or not, but we have introduced dues at some point as like our main form of funding. So we do $15 a semester or $25 a year, just kind of pretty low barrier for entry, but we do require that of anyone who wants to either use the computers in the lab or who wants to join a club team. Um, and so we use that money to fund our events, to fund our equipment. We bought a Switch 2 this year for putting out in the lab that people can use now. So that was
Cool.
definitely a big one
Yeah.
that came into play. Yeah.
Keeping up with college esports can feel impossible sometimes. With scores and information scattered across multiple different websites, it is incredibly challenging to follow consistent storylines. That's why we created College Esports News. Since our launch in 2022, College Esports News has been primarily volunteer run. As a team, we've been able to create over 300 pieces of content across graphics, videos, and written articles for viewers like you to enjoy and keep up with the happenings in collegiate esports. Along the way, we've been able to offer several paid opportunities on projects like Torchbearers, creating written articles for our website, and through our coverage of some partner leagues. We want to make this semester incredible, but we can't do it alone. CEN is currently crowdfunding to cover operational costs. These are the expenses that keep our processes running smoothly and enable us to level up our coverage. If you'd like to contribute, you can go to paypal.me/collegeenews to tip now. Every dollar, share, or kind word makes a world of a difference. Thank you so much for your consideration and support. Now, back to my conversation with Jack. Okay. So it sounds like there were, kind of with Nick leaving, right? There's a lot of things that you don't know that one person does, and then they leave, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a lot more holes here than we might have thought originally. But it's good that you've kind of made those adjustments along the way. I guess the other question, actually, that I meant to ask earlier and didn't quite get the chance to, what was the announcement to the rest of the student body? Obviously, as an insider, up-and-coming club president, you were probably aware slightly before, but not much before. The rest of campus knew. What was the reaction like from the rest of your peers?
Yeah, so this we'll go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here because this was actually a whole big thing because obviously the reason that Chu got cut and the varsity program got cut is because of university-wide budget cuts. And that had not been announced to the student body like at the time that we found out. Like obviously like we found out that Chu was losing his job and that the varsity people were the varsity program was no longer going to exist. And then we were all like, okay, well, SLU, what the heck? Like, you didn't tell us about any of this. And all these other people, even, like, for other clubs, I think I heard, I can't remember a specific example, but maybe, like, the theater club or something, they, like, lost a bunch of their funding, too. And so all these people were like, what is the deal? Like, we're losing all this. Where's our transparency? So one of the things we actually did was I met a girl who worked, I think she graduated, for U News, the university newspaper, and we got together and we did something kind of like this last year, and we got on the front page of U News talking about the esports program getting cut right after they won their championship. And there was a whole bunch of like drama with that, like they had to like modify the wording in the article and like do all this shenanigans in order to be able to put us in the newspaper. But eventually we got it on there and we got out there. And I can't remember if it was after that article came out or before, but at some point SLU sent out an email and they were like, yeah, well, we had to cut a bunch of stuff. So we were all pretty head up about that for a while, with the university basically not being transparent about what's going on. Obviously, like if it was a public university, I think that stuff is mandated to be public. I'm not sure. But since SLU is private, they kind of are at their own discretion, and I think that came into play a bit there. And so we had to kind of fight for our right to party there a bit and get to the bottom of what was going on. But we eventually figured it out, and obviously SLU came through eventually. So
Sure. So I guess in the aftermath, how were you deciding what aspects of the varsity program that you would be able to carry on, right? I don't know, at some point I assume it was up to the players on whether or not they wanted to try to pursue avenues elsewhere if they wanted to try to stick together and form a club team. But then beyond that, how did you go about deciding what would happen to the facility and any other like support staff or auxiliary staff that were involved with the program?
Right. So the varsity team in particular, kind of like you mentioned, it was all left up to them. They were allowed to stay at SLU and keep their scholarship, the whole time till they graduate. Um, I think a couple of them got scouted by other schools, and a couple of them decided to stay. I think SkyTech Danny, my buddy, he stayed, but he just doesn't play League anymore. Like he just stopped playing League after that. So um, I still see him around. I don't know about any of the rest of them, but that was kind of just up to them. And they all kind of made their own choices in regards to that. In terms of like the other parts of the program, like the lab, I think the lab is only the other one. I think the only personnel we really had was Chu. I don't know that there was any like other fancy stuff going on there. But for the lab, we definitely, as I mentioned earlier, we introduced those dues and then made it a mandate to pay those dues if you want to use the computers in the lab. And I think that was a really big change for us. I think that was a really important step for us because now that varsity is gone, I think those computers are like our big drawing point because it's like, these open access gaming computers on campus, you can go to the library and use a computer or whatever, but you can't you can't go play Apex on the library computer. So
Right.
we have a little bit of a draw there, and we, I guess you could say we monetized it to help support ourselves because now I think even a lot of the times Chu was willing to go out of his own pocket to like help support the club and like fill in gaps, but without all that stuff to support us, we just had to find whatever we could, and that seemed to be the most reasonable kind of pathway we could take. So
Yeah. So as you're rolling out the membership dues, I imagine that turned some people away that were like excited to be involved at all because now they thought, oh, well, I have to go pay something if I want to continue being involved. And even if it's small, no amount of it's small will detract from the fact that it's no longer free. How are you getting the rest of your base in the club to buy in to that model?
right, so there's actually a specific example with this one. The former Overwatch players from previous years strongly objected to paying dues, and there was kind of just nothing we could do about that. Well, I guess that's not entirely fair. We did do something about that. So they, the way we kind of enforce the dues is like if you join a club team, you have like a month to pay it until you get a warning, and then you get another month before you get suspended, basically. And I have a little clause in our handbook that's like, hey, if you can't pay dues, like for any reason, like if we need to talk about that, then that's perfectly fine. But these guys on the Overwatch team were just like straight up objecting. Like they were just like, no, I'm not going to do that, whatever, whatever. So after 2 months into last year, I think it was, we basically just gave them all the boot. And, you can imagine that it kind of sucks to have to do that, but we just due process, right? You kind of have to, you got to make it fair for everyone. So,
well, and at some point, as a club president, you've only got so much time in the day. You've got your own classes and work to deal with. You're not going to chase after players for a particular game. At some point, you're like, all right, fine, go do it on your own then.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that was another thing. We did say like they can't play under the SLU name with the SLU banner or whatever. And if we do, then we'll reach out, or if they do, then we'll reach out to tournament organizers or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of how that went down for that. I'd say for the other people that, like prospective members, I think that the fee is low enough at $25 a year that it's accessible to anyone who's willing. I mean, I've seen clubs who are at like $40 dues, and then obviously like frat dues are like obscene. So we think it's pretty fair, and we haven't seen much complaining since the Overwatch debacle about the dues themselves. Most people are just like, oh, you want $25? Sure. Like they know that it goes to supporting the club, and especially since losing varsity, they know that that's kind of a necessity. So we usually don't have to do too much pandering to
Sure.
get prospective people in.
Do you have an idea of about how many dues paying members you have? If you don't want to say, that's fine. But
No, yeah.
I thought I'd
So
ask.
yeah, last year we had, I think it was about 80, and this year we're only at, I want to say 30 to 40 so far. But
Okay.
they tend to trickle in, especially um, since we're only in October. We haven't hit that like warning deadline yet or that suspension deadline yet,
Ah,
and so usually the people who are on the teams are slacking a bit, and so we get like
yeah.
10 or 20 extra whenever we send out that announcement. So
Okay.
yeah, I'd say we'll end up somewhere in the ballpark of 50 to 60 this year. So a little bit down from last year, but it's I think the collaborations will help a lot to um, keep it going, and I hope that whoever I pass the torch on to can keep those relationships alive because like even the commuter student association is on the other side of the wall from the lab, um, and I've met with a couple of them about some things. Obviously, it's not they're not really like a club; it's just like the commuters, but they have their own space over there as
Yeah.
well. So I think building those relationships will help us stay afloat in the future.
Well, you talk about building relationships. It had to have taken a lot of relationships amongst the leadership team to make it through the rocky waters that came that summer. Who else, aside from yourself, obviously, who was thrown into this position, stepped up to help kind of lead along the way, and why were their roles critical?
Yeah, so I'd say, in particular last year, um, my roommate Garrett, who is now VP and treasurer, um, was event coordinator, I believe, and he definitely picked up some slack on putting together some events to make sure that we could kind of keep the fire burning. And then I kind of helped him with securing the funding and doing all the logistics of all that. And that's kind of continued into this year. Like I said, now he's VP and treasurer and is working on, um, chasing people down for dues, and I think that's his favorite part. Um, but then, like I said, Patrick and Christy, our event coordinators, putting together OSLU has been good. That was a good time, and obviously this big collaboration that's coming up for Halloween here. I'm excited to see how that shapes up. I don't even know exactly what the plan is. I just know that it's like four clubs and it's gonna be crazy. So I'm excited for that. So yeah, I think events are really the event coordinators from last year, the event coordinators from this year. I think that's been crucial because it particularly appeals to the casual audience. We've kind of always struggled with, our name is SLU Esports, so everyone's like, oh my god, esports, it's like sweaty. It's like I got to be at least master to even like look at these guys or whatever, right?
Right.
But we're trying to convey the idea that no, we're just trying to hang out and play games. I mean, you can play Mario Kart, you can be challenger in league, you can be your grandma. I mean, it's like whatever. We just want to hang out on Discord and play games or whatever. And so I think the events in particular help bridge that gap that we've struggled with for a long time. Um, because we do stuff like trivia nights or Mario Kart tournaments or whatever. We had a couple weeks ago for homecoming. We had a Mario Kart tournament, and there were a lot of people there that I had never seen before. I mean, they're not on any of the like competitive teams, but they showed up.
Right.
Um, and it helped that SLU funded a Switch as the grand prize, but
Well,
yeah, it was still good to see fresh faces, and I think that's our most reliable way of pulling in those fresh faces, along with those partnerships. So
yeah, cool. You talking about the upcoming Halloween event reminded me of a particular event we did at Ohio State while I was president there, where we obviously had the like main involvement fair at the beginning of the year, but then about a week into the semester, we did like a bonus nerd culture involvement fair. We called it the main menu, where we got all of the other like the tabletop games club, the board games club, the we were there along with the official esports program, and there were a few others. The Rhythm Games Club was there too, and we kind of brought everyone together. And that was one of the coolest events I think we did while I was there because here was 200 people that were getting to know each other. You know,
Right.
all the club leaders were sitting behind each of their tables. They'd go around to talk to one another. The freshmen who came in who had no idea where to go but knew that there'd be something in that room for them there was really cool. So hopefully you have that kind of aha moment upcoming at this Halloween event. That should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I guess other thing I want to ask, who Nick's gone, right? Who has been your larger advocates on the staff or faculty side of the university, or have you made those connections yet?
So that's something we're still actively working on, because the guy I referenced earlier who like manages and owns the building, or I don't know what the situation is, but he is supposed to be like our main um I don't know, point of contact, I guess, but he's not very responsive to email, and he's kind of hard to get to in his office. So we've done a little bit of sleuthing around with other faculty members. I know there was like maybe a comp sci professor that we looked at, and maybe a business professor that we looked at. But we've been largely surviving without any sort of faculty advising or assistance. I think, though, that we're doing okay without it. I don't think. I mean, obviously, it'd be nice to have, but I think that anytime we feel like we need advising or anything like that, we can find somewhere to get it. Like, we know we've got connections, and we're usually able to work stuff out, even not having a faculty member specifically written down. We'd like to have it. We'd like him to be a little more accessible, but we're dealing with it as it comes. So
yeah, that's the way it goes, right? Especially as a club, you do your best, but at the end of the day, they have their staff or faculty obligations.
Exactly.
Unless their club advisor is not a line on their job description, as it turns out. Question I want to ask you: what do you see as any of the potential positives from the fact that you maybe don't have to worry about Nick being there, or don't have to worry about consistent involvement in that way? Do you feel like the connections in the club are a little more organic? Do you feel like you're able to do a little more maybe than you would have otherwise while the program was there? Do you kind of see anything kind of coming in terms of that culture change without the program?
Yeah, so I don't know that it's hard to say if it came about specifically because of the dissolution of varsity or not, but I definitely think, like I said, the bridge between casual and competitive has kind of slimmed down a little bit. I think in particular because, the varsity program gave even more towards that like sweaty competitive image. And so not having that there kind of makes it less intimidating, I think. And so that's helped a little bit. Like I said, the necessity for hosting events and connecting, partnering with other clubs has also been good. It's hard to say if that's a direct cause or if that's just what I wanted to do, and that's just kind of how it's played out. But yeah, I think really the big one is that bridge between casual and competitive. I think that people, like, even at the involvement fair, where you sit at your table and you talk about your club, one of like the first things we used to mention is like the varsity program. But now my spiel is like completely different. My spiel is like we welcome casual and competitive gamers alike. No matter your skill, no matter what games you play, whatever. And so my spiel sounds more like that now, and it's more of like a kind of community kind of thing, as opposed to like it's almost like comparing like an Olympic powerlifting gym to like Planet Fitness, or like more of like a inclusive community kind of thing. I almost feel like, compared to before, where before it was like, oh, we all got to be Olympic powerlifters or we're not living up to the esports name. So I think that like kind of taken a little bit of the pressure off probably has made more of a difference than I've thought about, actually. I mean, that's something that I haven't considered before. So
I can imagine that it's It's probably one of those things, especially I think as a club leader, where you don't take the time to think about, you're like, oh, this is just how it is now, like whatever,
Yeah.
right? You're so on to the next thing. And then you take a step back from that 3,000-foot view that you don't get to do often, and you go, wait a minute, something's
It all
different
makes
here.
sense now.
Do you know what else makes sense right now? Supporting college esports news by getting yourself some cool collegiate esports merch. We have hoodies and zip up jackets to keep you warm as the temperatures start to drop, and a jersey which you can customize with your gamer tag. Want something a little bit more casual? Check out our college esports news t shirts. You too can be a torchbearer with our OG design. Visit acquire.cen and use code CEN for 5% off your college esports news merch order. Again, that's AKQUIRE.ca/CEN. Now, back to my conversation with Jack. Being a year and a half in, you feels like you've been able to make some steps to regain some of that momentum, and hopefully you're growing in more of that grassroots way. But the question I want to ask you now is, assuming that this change was still going to happen the way that it did, what do you wish would have been in place that might have made the transition away from the varsity program smoother?
I think in particular, clearer communication. I think 100%. Especially with the guy that manages the building. I think if we had a more open line of communication and a bit more like direct support, even if it didn't come from him specifically, even if it came from like someone else, like an event director or something at SLU, just something to fill the hole, because they basically, yanked the plug on varsity and Chew, and then they're like, okay, we'll fend for yourself. I think if it had been executed a little better, there would have been a band-aid placed on that hole to support us in, even if it's just for like a year or whatever, I don't know, but just someone that we can talk to and be like, hey, what's the deal? What are we going to do now, like as a club? But yeah, kind of like you said, only being a club, it's like kind of, I don't know, to the university, it's a lot to ask for. To like,
Yeah,
they usually just let clubs fend for themselves. So we're
right.
pretty much at the mercy of like SGA, student government, for all that kind of stuff. And you know, they can be helpful with some things, but it's just not the same sort of support or advising that you would get from, maybe a faculty member, or
Yeah,
like Chu in particular knew his stuff about esports, right? And like he was involved with this community and whatnot, so he was like a very useful person to have. And there's not really anyone else now on campus that's like that integrated into esports itself. So,
right.
yeah.
I guess in that case, I mean, I don't want to sit around and like play the blame game here by any means, but who do you wish you could have talked to, maybe aside from the facility manager, um, or who do you blame for not like having that first connection? Like, do you feel like you were in a position where you could have been more proactive and you didn't realize that was going to happen, or like should someone have like introduced themselves, reached out? Like, how do you think that process should have gone? Basically, the largest question is, as a director, right? This is happening to some programs across the country, right? That's the reality of our situation right now. So, as someone who does care, right, just as much as Nick did, what can I better do to provide you the tools that you need to succeed in my absence if I was gone tomorrow?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, if we're pointing fingers, I think SLU bureaucracy, but
Well,
I don't think that's specific to
that's
SLU. I think just generally speaking, bureaucracy never is
yes,
friendly, especially like
right.
we said, to clubs and that kind of thing. It's just kind of water under the bridge for them. Um, but I think it kind of Chu found out all of this like in an email, basically. Like they just sent him an email and basically said you're done. Like it wasn't even like a meeting or anything like that.
It's
And
like a
so
breakup text.
yeah, exactly. So kind of like you said, I think it would have been really beneficial to like get the e-board together, get Chu together, get maybe the varsity players, whatever, and like have a talk about like, okay, we need to cut this. It's going to get cut no matter what, right? Like you can't do anything about this. The decision is made. You're getting cut. But how can we help you transition? How can we like um, make this easier? Because obviously, this sucks and this is gonna mess up your club and this is gonna mess up you guys' future or whatever. Um, I think that would have been great. But like I said earlier, we didn't really get that level of clarity or
All right.
communication. But absolutely, I wish that would have been a thing that happened, and I think it would have made a huge difference actually, because then that would have been our opportunity to say, okay, can you guys hook us up with a faculty advisor? Can you guys hook us up with whatever? Like instead of now we're just like swimming, and I
Yeah.
message you every now and again, and I'm like, do you know anybody? Do you like? But now it's like so far behind us, and so
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. This is the way life is now, right?
indeed, yep,
It's like, all right, well, gotta figure this out one way or another.
yep.
Um, I guess in kind of closing on this saga, um, what do you think, as all of us who are not in the day to day listen to the story, listen to what you're doing now with the connections you made to other club programs, and to your, restructuring, the dues implementation, those sorts of things. What do you hope that both, practitioners, people like myself who work in this collegiate space, or your peers at other institutions, maybe the other club leaders that are running their club programs, what do you hope that they take away from your story?
That's a great question. I think maybe cliche, but trying to do the best you can with what you have is very important. I think our story at this point is pretty much cut and dry. Doing the best with what you can. Um, I definitely think that community is important. I think that kind of what I've been harping on about making connections with and partnerships with other organizations. I think that's very beneficial at any school, any even if you're talking about companies or whatever, working together, even if it's not like it's not like a contractual obligation or whatever, just having those connections and that like shared knowledge is really helpful. And that can even trickle down into like just life in general. Like, keep your circle tight, but keep your web large. Like knowing and having a big community and a big support group makes a really big difference, not just for organizations, companies, but you yourself in your life. So I think that's a really important thing to notice, and I think also the inclusivity side of things, in particular, like I said, the casual versus competitive bridge. Basically, trying to umbrella as many people as you can, um, and accommodate as many people as you can um, within that umbrella, because you never know who's going to be your next e-board member or something who is like a quiet kid who didn't want to say hi at the general body meeting or whatever. Um, but you gave him the courage to come up and talk to you about League, and you made that connection, and now he's like a crazy good graphic designer, right? Um, so I think those are the big takeaways for sure. Is make your connections, build your communities, um, and connect with everyone you can, include everyone you can, and yeah, I think that
Well,
sums it
Jack, the
up.
last question that we like to ask everyone here on the show
Mm-hmm.
is if you could snap one, or wow, V, go ahead and edit that one out. The last question we'd like to ask Jack is, if you can snap your fingers to change one thing about collegiate esports, what would it be?
Ooh, collegiate esports as a whole.
Yeah, we're going big with this one.
Okay. I might have to think on that for a bit. What would I change about collegiate esports in general? Maybe almost like a centralized something, if that makes sense. So, like, for example,
You couldn't be more vague.
for like League, for example, we have, CLOL and we have CVAL and we have whatever. And I think kind of part of what you guys are trying to do here with Collegiate Esports News is like a blanket, like almost like a blanket program or like a blanket advisory thing of like, this is Collegiate Esports. Here are all the different games that are a part of Collegiate Esports. Here are, the universities that participate in Collegiate Esports. Here are, the presidents of those clubs at those universities, whatever. Some sort of like amalgam that can kind of bring cohesion to the entire system. I think that would be awesome. I think that's a tall task. I mean, obviously we're speaking hypotheticals here, snap my fingers.
Right.
But especially because like, I think the game communities themselves tend to be kind of divided. Like, I think the League community is very separate from the Valorant community, which is, like, there's some overlap, but, like, you usually play your games and you stick to your games. And I think sort of having a central, kind of like I said with, like, our club, trying to be, like, a central place where you can, like, explore other games or you can explore, like, maybe you're a shooter player and you come to SLU one time and you're like, oh my god, rhythm games are great. Like, having some sort of connection to
Like
bring it all
almanac,
together. Yeah, something like
a
that.
glossary lookup or something.
Something like that. I think that'd be awesome.
All right, good deal. Well, thanks so much, Jack, for joining us. If you have any other closing thoughts or shout-outs you want to give, I'll give the floor over to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. It was wonderful talking today. I think the only shout out I want to give is my e-board. All my guys.
Good shout out.
On my e-board. We're doing a great job putting together events this year. And kind of keeping the club going. I know even Tavin reached out to me a couple weeks ago and he's like, you guys are doing a pretty good job keeping it afloat considering what happened. And I appreciate that because, yeah, it's a situation, but we're pulling through. So I'm proud of that.
Well, good deal. Best of luck as you continue to pull through at SLU there, Jack.
Thank you.
You just listened to an episode of Torchbearers by College Esports News. Thanks so much again to our guest, Jack Herrick, for joining us. As always, I was your host, Kenneth Gracino. Tom Screech collaborated as a writer on this episode. V. Tran is our editor. Sheridan Shea helped record this episode, and Derek Santiago is creative director of CEN. Be sure to follow CEN on X, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram to stay up to date on all things college esports, and check out our website at collegeesportsnews.org. If you liked this episode, please engage with it on social media. And if you want to support us even more, you can visit our merch store at acquire.ca/CEN or give a tip at paypal.me/collegeenews. Thanks again for listening, and keep carrying the flame.